Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. Red dust swirled in thick clouds across the barren expanse of Tarsus IV, where howling winds wailed like the mournful cries of a long-forgotten planet. Beneath the dim glow of a solitary sun hanging in a leaden sky, Sergeant Elias Voss tugged his goggles higher, squinting against the tiny grains of sand stinging his face. His heavy combat boots crunched into the cracked earth, each step a dry, grating sound, as if the planet itself groaned under his weight. The sleek black armor, once a badge of pride for a mercenary of the Human Planetary Coalition, was now coated in crimson dust, its faint scratches whispering tales of a dozen brutal campaigns. Strapped tight to his thighs were an arsenal of tools and weapons, a razor-sharp dagger, a plasma pistol, and a few smoke grenades, extensions of his body as vital as his own breath. "This damn place is nothing but sand and lunatics," he muttered, his voice hoarse from the parched air, casting a glance at a pile of wind-tossed scrap metal teetering by the roadside. Rusted fragments and severed wires lay scattered, the bones of a civilization swallowed whole by the desert. The Tarsus market loomed ahead, a chaotic sprawl of tattered tents stitched from canvas and scavenged metal, trembling in the gusts as if on the verge of collapse. A cacophony of shouts and cries rose from a menagerie of creatures, blending into a bizarre symphony. Six-legged Zirith hissed shrill calls to hawk their wares, their spiny limbs flailing like a grotesque dance. Vordani merchants, their bulging yellow eyes glinting beneath hooded cloaks, glared at him warily, their long, bony fingers clutching their goods. A human like Elias wasn't welcome here, especially not a mercenary fresh off a 3-month contract escorting or convoys through the deathlands of Tarsus IV. He stepped past the 3-armed Jexian peddling glowing stones, their faint green light flickering like will-o-wisps in the desert haze. "Overpriced junk," he grumbled, his tone laced with dry sarcasm, trudging onward, shoulders slumped under the bone-deep exhaustion that clung to him. All he wanted now was a stiff drink, something strong enough to sear his throat and burn away the hollow ache of endless battle. But then, a sharp metallic screech sliced through his weary thoughts. Like a blade scraping stone, cutting through the market's din, Elias whipped around, his keen eyes locking onto the source. A rickety hovercart, its engine wheezing like a dying beast, careened through the crowd. Its driver, a Clithian with pearlescent scales shimmering faintly under the weak sun, glared with narrow, vicious eyes. He cracked an electric whip, blue sparks snapping through the air, lashing the gaunt, shaggy beasts pulling the cart, creatures that snarled and flinched with every strike. The Clithian roared something in a grating tongue, its jagged syllables buzzing like insects in the night. But it wasn't the driver or the cart that stopped Elias in his tracks. It was what tumbled from the loose pile of cargo behind. A cylindrical metal object, about a meter tall, rolled across the ground, carving a deep furrow in the red sand before coming to rest in the dusty road. The crowd fell silent for a heartbeat, then surged forward, whispers rippling like waves. Yet no one dared approach, as if it were a curse forged in the desert's heart. "What the hell is this?" Elias muttered, his hand instinctively dropping to the pistol at his thigh, calloused fingers tightening around the grip. He advanced, boots thudding against the sand, each step a crisp crunch echoing the pulse in his chest. The metal gleamed under the faint sunlight, its surface shimmering like polished silver, etched with strange, spiraling runes, curving lines both graceful and sharp, unlike any language he'd encountered in 3 years of drifting across the stars. As he drew closer, the cylinder hummed faintly, a soft whine escaping it, like the last breath of a machine on the brink of death. Elias narrowed his eyes, a chill racing down his spine, not from the desert heat but from something unnatural, almost alive, radiating from the object. "Don't pull any tricks, you alien junk," he warned, half joking, half serious, his hand hovering over a simple latch on the cylinder's side. Years of battlefield instinct screamed at him, "Walk away, don't meddle with unknown trouble, don't let dumb curiosity get you killed like so many others." But then, another sound emerged from within, a faint groan, almost human, laced with pain and desperation, piercing through the cold metal shell. "Damn it!" Elias sighed, his breath a thin wisp in the dry air. He flipped the latch with a soldier's swift precision. The lid popped open, releasing a blast of frigid air tinged with the scent of scorched metal and something like blood. Elias staggered back a step, nearly toppling over at the sight before him. Inside was a girl, curled tight in the cramped space like a caged animal. Her skin gleamed a pale silver, rippling like liquid steel under the sunlight, smooth yet cold, as if molded from living metal. Long black hair spilled in a tangled mess over her angular face, half hiding a pair of blazing emerald eyes, icy flames both beautiful and terrifying, staring straight through his thick armor. She wore a tattered gray outfit, the fabric shredded to reveal faint scratches on her skin that didn't bleed. Her arms and legs were bound by glowing red energy cuffs, hissing faintly with every slight movement, like electric serpents constricting their prey. The crowd erupted in murmurs, their gazes a mix of curiosity and fear, but Elias heard nothing beyond the pounding of his own heart. Those eyes weren't just striking, they held a sharp intelligence, a deep well of pain, and a fragile spark of hope, like a lantern flickering in the dark. "Who are you?" he asked, voice rough with dust and shock, his hand resting on his pistol but not drawing it. She answered with a series of low, melodic tones, like echoes from a distant cave, soft yet alien, no human tongue he knew. He raised a hand, palm open, signaling her not to fear. "I won't hurt you," he said slowly, his tone dropping to soothe her. She blinked, thin lips trembling as if to reply, but before she could, a shadow fell over them, blotting out the feeble sun. "That's my property, human!" a guttural voice snarled, rough as shattered stone. Elias looked up, his cold gaze locking onto the towering Scarven blocking his path. The creature's skin was rugged like volcanic rock, its muscular arms gripping a sleek plasma rifle. 2 lackeys flanked him, a cyborg with a flickering red eye, half flesh, half machine, and a wiry Zethi spider, its 8 hairy legs clutching twin pistols. "That's a Tychari warrior, trained to kill, worth a fleet," Scarven growled, jabbing a finger at the girl. "Hand it over or die." Elias straightened, his grip tightening on his pistol but keeping it holstered. He glanced at the girl in the cylinder, a Tychari warrior, Scarven claimed, and saw her emerald eyes narrow, assessing him without a trace of fear. "She's not cargo," he said slowly, voice hard as forged steel. "She's alive. Step off, or I'll show you how humans deal with trash." Scarven let out a guttural laugh, the sound like rocks crumbling under pressure. "You've chosen death, fool!" he roared, raising his plasma rifle. But Elias was faster. His hand flashed to his weapon, a single shot blasting into Scarven's knee with a deafening crack that echoed through the market. The brute collapsed, clutching his leg and howling as black blood oozed from the wound. Elias lunged forward, yanking the girl from the cylinder. "Run!" he shouted. She stumbled to her feet, legs shackled and unsteady, but clung to him as they bolted. The crowd scattered in chaos, gunfire erupting behind them, red dust swirling up to shroud the pandemonium. They plunged into a narrow alley between 2 ragged tents, red dust billowing behind them like a concealing curtain. The thunder of pursuing footsteps pounded like war drums, mingling with the wind's shriek through the market's crumbling gaps. Elias panted, his breath searing his dry throat, fingers gripping his plasma pistol, scarred hands brushing the warm metal. His hawk-like eyes darted around, scanning the torn canvas walls and piled refuse for any escape. Scarven's gravelly roar echoed from behind, punctuated by the shrill whine of plasma shots streaking past his head. A green bolt slashed the air, grazing a dangling cloth beside him, leaving a smoldering scar that reeked of smoke. "Move!" he barked, voice raw, yanking the Tychari girl closer as another bolt scorched past his shoulder, the heat licking his skin and leaving a faint whiff of charred flesh. The alley was claustrophobic, thick with the stench of old oil and damp sand rising from the uneven ground, nearly tripping him on its jagged ruts. Elias halted beside a heap of rusted barrels, their warped metal stacked haphazardly, oozing the rancid stink of long-rotted waste. He dropped to one knee, pulling his combat knife from its strap, a sleek black blade, sharp as a predator's claw, glinting coldly in the gray sky's faint light. "Hold still," he ordered, voice low but firm, leaning in to slice through the glowing red energy cuffs binding her legs. The restraints fizzled out with a sharp crack, sparks flaring like fireworks before dissolving into wisps of smoke. She looked up, emerald eyes blazing like frozen fire, a mix of awe and gratitude flickering within them. She spoke, her voice a lilting hum like wine through a deep cavern, soft, alien, words sliding past his ears like a wordless song. Then she pointed to a hidden passage behind the trash, veiled by tattered fabrics swaying in the breeze. An exit? He asked, skepticism in his tone, unsure if she grasped human speech. She nodded sharply, a warrior's crisp motion, and though every instinct screamed this could be a trap in this deadly wasteland, Elias chose to trust her, pulling her along. The alley spat them into a desolate clearing, where rusted hulks of ancient machines lay strewn beneath the ashen sky, relics of a forgotten age. Broken metal pillars jutted upward, severed wires dangled like vines, and massive gears tilted in the dust, coated in red like dried blood. Elias swept the area, pistol still clutched tight, finger hovering over the trigger, ready to fire at a moment's notice. The wind whistled through the wreckage, a cold murmur like death's whisper. "We need a safe spot," he said, voice dropping to a near whisper, glancing toward the distant labor district where ramshackle roofs flickered through the haze. "I've got a hideout there, but we'd have to cross that crowd." The girl rested a hand on his shoulder, her slender fingers icy through his armor, a gentle yet resolute touch, conveying a silent message. She tilted her head, emerald eyes locking onto his for a moment, then pointed upward, no, toward a small, rusted saucer hovering faintly in the thick dust cloud. A ship. Her meaning shone clear as daylight through the gloom. That was their true escape, not some temporary shack. But before they could move, an engine's roar tore through the silence, booming like thunder across the desert. Scarvin was back, his heavy tread pounding the sand, leading a squad of 6 mercenaries, each bristling with weapons, from plasma rifles to glowing energy blades. "No running now, human!" he bellowed, voice thick with murder, firing a plasma bolt that grazed Elias's ear, searing hot and leaving a ringing in his skull. Elias shoved the girl behind him, drawing his pistol in a blur and squeezing the trigger without hesitation. The shot slammed into a mercenary's chest, the blast echoing as black blood sprayed and the cyborg's red eyes flickered out. But they were outnumbered, their foes closing in like a pack of predators, and Elias knew, guns alone wouldn't win this fight. Then she acted. With a low growl rumbling from deep within, she stepped in front of him, bound arms raised like an unyielding shield. A brilliant blue light erupted from her, a frozen flame flaring into a solid energy wall that stopped the incoming plasma barrage dead. Explosions rang out as the bolts shattered against it, dissolving into pale smoke. Scarvin stumbled back, white eyes wide with shock, jaw slack in disbelief. Elias froze, mouth agape, breath caught at the sight, this fragile-looking girl wielding impossible power. She turned to him, her radiant eyes dimming with exhaustion, silver skin glistening with sweat, but a faint smile curved her lips, as if to say she was still standing. "You can do that?" he asked, voice trembling, not from fear, but awe. She nodded weakly, then collapsed into the sand, her breath a fading whisper. Elias knelt beside her, hand on her shoulder, feeling her frail frame shudder beneath the torn fabric. "I'm not leaving you," he vowed, voice ironclad, eyes blazing with a soldier's resolve to never abandon a comrade. He scooped her up, strong arms cradling her tight, sprinting toward the ship through the wreckage. Black smoke rose from smoldering machines, the acrid stench of molten metal filling his lungs, underscored by the roar of engines behind. A plasma bolt struck his shoulder, the impact staggering him, blood seeping through his fingers as he clutched her closer. "Hang on!" he gritted out, steps heavy but relentless, each one a defiance of death itself. A massive figure loomed ahead, not Scarvin, but a towering android, its metal frame gleaming faintly, wielding a black energy rifle. "It's over, human!" Its metallic voice droned, cold as the void. Elias set her down, lunging with his knife before it could fire. He drove the blade into a gap in its chest, shoving with all his might. Sparks burst like fireworks as it crumpled, clanging against the ground. But the engines roared louder, closer now. Scarvin had caught up, commanding a hovering war rig, its plasma cannon aimed dead at them, the red glow of its barrel flashing like a demon's eye. Elias dragged her behind a stack of metal crates just as the cannon fired, the blast shaking the earth, sand and debris raining around them. He checked his pistol, 2 rounds left, nowhere near enough for this army. "Damn it!" he muttered, glancing at her. She trembled, breath shallow, but her icy fingers brushed his arm. An image flashed in his mind, not words, but memory, the ship surrounded by mercenaries, yet a hidden tunnel nearby, buried under trash, leading straight to the landing pad. "A tunnel?" he asked, urgent. She nodded faintly, emerald eyes dim but hopeful. Elias hoisted her up, racing for the tunnel's mouth beneath the rubble, dodging another barrage that collapsed the area behind them, the explosion reverberating like a final warning. They plummeted into the underground tunnel, red sand and dirt cascading after them like a miniature flood, the sound of crumbling stone echoing in the tight space. Elias clutched the girl, twisting mid-fall to shield her from the jagged metal shards raining down. His back slammed into a mottled wall, breath hissing through clenched teeth, but his arms stayed locked around her shoulders, sparing her further harm. The tunnel was pitch black, lit only by faint slivers seeping through ceiling cracks, thick with the musty reek of mold and the metallic tang of rust, like a tomb lost to centuries. Elias flicked on the flashlight mounted to his armor, its white beams slicing the dark, illuminating cracked concrete walls streaked with black moss and rusted pipes dangling like a dead machine's veins. "You okay?" he asked, voice rough with dust, setting her gently onto the cold floor. She nodded, but her body quaked like dry leaves in a storm, her emerald eyes, once blazing like icy fire, now dulled like a moon veiled by clouds. He drew his knife again, its black steel flashing under the beam, leaning down to sever the last red energy cuff binding her hands. It snapped with a piercing crack, sparks dancing briefly like fireflies before fading. She shuddered, curling in on herself as if waking from a long nightmare, her silver hands trembling as they sought warmth. "Who are you?" he asked, voice hoarse with curiosity and concern, eyes fixed on her sharp features, her black hair matted with sweat and dust. She didn't answer at once, instead pressing a hand to his chest, her cold fingers cutting through his armor with an odd sensation, like a faint current along his spine. A memory not his own flooded his mind, a strange world unfolded, towering blue stone pillars rising into a violet sky, shimmering like jade. Silver-skinned warriors, tall and unyielding, stood in ranks, energy weapons gleaming as they battled an unseen darkness surging like a tidal wave, and her, standing among them, a glowing sword raised high, black hair whipping in the wind, emerald eyes burning as she led them with silent resolve. The vision faded, leaving Elias stunned, breath trapped in his chest. "Tarak," she said, voice faint but clear for the first time, soft as wind over stone, resonating in the stillness. "Tarak Veyn." Elias nodded, asking no more. They had no time to delve into her past, not with death stalking so close. A distant engine's growl rumbled through the trembling walls, a predator's snarl scenting blood. Their pursuers had found the tunnel. Elias hauled Tarak to her feet, his solid arms circling her waist, feeling her fragile form shiver beneath her rags. They raced down the narrow passage, his heavy boots slamming the damp ground, each thud sinking with their ragged breaths. The tunnel opened into an old storage chamber, wider but reeking of decay. Rotted wooden crates sagged in heaps, severed wires hung like cobwebs, and rusted metal scraps littered the floor. He checked his shoulder, the plasma wound still throbbing, blood clotted but pain radiating down his arm. "Where's the ship?" he asked, voice low and urgent, eyes sweeping the shadowed space. Tarak pointed to a rusted metal door at the far end, its hinges creaking in the faint breeze, a final warning. But before they could reach it, the door burst open with a crash, and Scarvin stormed in, his hulking frame blotting out the light. 3 mercenaries followed, a clanking cyborg with a metal arm, a 6-legged Zereth wielding an energy blade, and a squat human gripping a pistol. "No escaping now!" Scarvin roared, voice like splintering rock, firing a plasma bolt that scorched the wall beside Elias, black smoke curling upward. Elias fired back instantly, his last shot slamming into the Ziritha's chest, toppling it as its legs twitched in the sand. He charged into close quarters, knife flashing like a streak of light, plunging into the cyborg's chest. Sparks flew as it fell. But Scarvin was faster than expected. A massive hand seized Elias's collar, hurling him into the wooden crates. He crashed down, pain searing through him, chest heaving as splinters scattered. Tarak rose, legs shaking, raising her hands with a faint groan. A weak blue light flared from her, not as fierce as before but enough to shove Scarvin back, his head smashing into the wall with a thud. She crumpled immediately, exhausted, breath faltering like a dying breeze, and Elias scrambled to her, hands trembling as they touched her icy skin. "You can't keep doing that," he said, urgent and worried, staring into her fading emerald eyes. "It'll kill you." Tarak smiled faintly, pressing a hand to his chest, her cold fingers sending a wordless message. "Together," she spoke in his mind, voice soft yet resolute. Engines roared outside, metal clashing and walls shattering. They were breaking in. Elias lifted her, her weight feather-light in his arms, charging through the open door and up a steep staircase to the landing pad. From there, he saw the ship hovering hundreds of meters away, rusted but humming steadily, a promise of freedom. But between them and it stood a pack of mercenaries, weapons gleaming under the gray sun, encircling them like wolves. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the market, shaking the ground. Local rebels astride shaggy, hulking beasts charged the mercenaries, their roars and gunfire blending into a chaotic symphony. Elias grabbed Tarak's hand, her icy grip tightening on his, and they leapt from the roof, seizing the moment of disorder. He snatched a plasma rifle from a fallen foe, dropping 2 obstacles with precise shots, the blasts ringing out sharply. Tarak, though weak, raised a hand, conjuring faint blue pulses, feeble but enough to deflect stray rounds. They ran through smoke and red dust, each step a battle against death, until they reached the ship, a small, rusted transport standing tall amid the storm like a lighthouse. Elias slammed the control panel, punching in a military code with practiced ease, the hatch hissing open. He helped Tarak climb inside, their panting breaths merging in the cramped space, the door sealing shut behind them, a fleeting shield from the nightmare beyond. After the door sealed shut, Elias lunged for the pilot's seat in the darkness, his ragged breath still unsteady from their desperate flight. The cockpit was a void, lit only by the faint flicker of the control panel, its glow casting an eerie blue sheen across Elias Voss's scarred face. He dropped into the seat, hands darting over the dust-caked buttons, thumbs slamming the engine ignition. The machine groaned to life, a guttural roar like an old beast roused from slumber, shaking the rusted hull. Vibrations rippled through the chair, jarring his thick armor and making him clench his teeth against the throbbing pain in his shoulder. Elias glanced at Tarak slumped in the co-pilot's seat, her slender hands trembling as they brushed the controls, fingers of pale silver moving like an artist playing a final, fragile note. "Can you fly this thing?" he asked, voice low and urgent, eyes locked on her dimming emerald gaze. She nodded, a small, firm gesture, a silent vow. The ship shuddered violently, engines roaring louder, then lurched upward, blasting past the mercenaries screaming below. Plasma fire erupted in a relentless chorus, green bolts piercing the air, slamming into the hull with sharp, metallic bangs. A heavy blast struck the left wing, the impact rocking the ship like it might tip over, metal screeching in protest. Elias gritted his teeth, hands gripping the throttle, shoving it full force, sweat streaming down his brow as he roared in his mind. "Get up, you piece of junk, get up!" They tore through Tarsus IV's atmosphere, the engine's thunder melding with the shrieking wind outside, the red landscape shrinking into a blur of orange and gray on the radar, a fading nightmare. Elias exhaled hard, chest heaving as the cockpit's cold air flooded his lungs, washing away the battle's stifling heat. He turned to Tarak, his sharp eyes softening slightly as they met hers. "You okay?" he asked, voice dropping, a thread of worry slipping through. She nodded, but her emerald eyes flickered like a dying flame, her body quaking beneath her tattered rags, silver skin glinting with sweat and dust. "You've saved me twice now," he said, voice steady and deep, hand resting unconsciously on her seat's armrest, as if to lend her strength. I owe you? Tarak smiled, a faint, warm curve of her thin lips, like a crescent moon piercing the night. Her icy hand touched his chest, gentle yet firm, and a voice rang clear in his mind. Tarak Veyn. Last warrior? Elias nodded, saying nothing more, but a spark of admiration flared in his gaze. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a fighter, like him. The moment of calm shattered as a shrill buzz sliced through the cockpit, sharp as a blade through silence. A red-coded signal flashed on the screen, and Scarvin's gravelly voice crackled over the comms, dripping with triumph. Thought you'd slip away, human? That ship's a trap. It's got a tracker, we're coming. Elias cursed, a string of profanity spilling from his lips, fist slamming the console as if he could smash the bad news away. He ducked beneath the controls, eyes scanning the tangled wires, and spotted it, a small device, no bigger than a fist, pulsing red like a demon's eye in the dark. He drew his knife, its black blade flashing as he stabbed at it, but the metal was too tough, leaving only useless scratches. Damn it! He growled, sweat dripping from his chin, heart pounding as the radar screamed a warning. A small fleet, 3 sleek warships, black as void sharks, blipped onto the screen, hurtling toward them at terrifying speed, plasma cannons glowing like a death sentence. Can you do something? He asked, voice tight, glancing at Tarak with a desperate sliver of hope. She closed her eyes, trembling hands rising, silver fingers shimmering like molten steel. A faint blue light flared from her, wrapping the ship in a thin, fragile shield, just enough to deflect the first volley of plasma fire. Explosions boomed as shots struck the barrier, rattling the cockpit, but Tarak slumped back, limp as a broken doll, unconscious in her seat. The shield vanished instantly, leaving them naked to the storm of fire. Elias seized the controls, hands steady despite the chaos, weaving through the barrage with a soldier's grit. A bolt hit the main engine, a dry crack echoing as black smoke billowed inside, the stench of burning metal choking his lungs. The ship bucked wildly, then plummeted, not back to Tarsus IV, but toward a nearby moon, its surface a jagged maw of craters and sharp stone. They crashed in a deafening roar, the impact hurling Elias from his seat, his head slamming the console, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. Sand and rocks sprayed everywhere, metal shrieking as the hull tore apart, dust clouding his vision. He came to amid the wreckage, shoulder aching like it had been hammered, breaths escaping in faint groans. He scanned the cockpit. Tarak was gone, her seat empty save for silver blood streaking the torn leather. Tarak! He called, voice raw with dust and panic, pushing up on a jagged shard to stand. He crawled through the debris, pain flaring with every move, until he found her a few meters away, motionless on the moon's white sand. He dragged himself to her, hands shaking as he checked. She was breathing, but faintly, like a thread about to snap, her silver skin cold as ice. Don't die, he whispered, pulling her into his arms, fingers brushing her tangled black hair, chest heavy as if crushed by stone. But then, a figure emerged from the swirling dust, footsteps slow and deliberate crunching on the sand. Not Scarvin, but a human woman in a planetary coalition uniform, black and sleek, silver insignia gleaming, plasma pistol aimed at him. Her steel-gray eyes were frigid, her angular face devoid of emotion. Sergeant Voss, she said, voice cutting through the stillness like ice. You've just ruined our mission. That thing's no victim, it's a living Tychari weapon, and we need it. Elias rose, gripping his blood-stained knife, fury boiling in his veins. Who are you? He snarled, voice low as thunder, eyes blazing. Captain Marakel, Planetary Coalition, she replied, tone calm but razor-sharp. Tarak Veyn is the last Tychari warrior, a species wiped out for their power. We set her loose as bait to flush out smugglers. You were just a pawn, Voss. Tarak trembled in his arms, her breath fading like a dying breeze, pulling him from his rage. Elias tightened his grip on the knife, eyes never leaving her, not a weapon, not a pawn, but someone who'd chosen to stand with him on the edge of life and death. Mara stepped closer, her voice slicing through the cold like a blade. Elias held Tarak tight, glaring at his foe, then down at the girl in his arms, her faint breath slipping from thin, icy lips. "She's not a weapon. She's a person," he said, voice hard as forged steel, each word a declaration of war amid the moon's smoky haze. Mara smirked, a sound sharp as cracking ice, her eyes glinting with contempt under her coalition uniform's faint glow. "She could level a fleet with the energy in her body," she countered, voice even but cutting, pistol steady in her grip. "Don't be naive, Voss. That thing's no human, it's a destruction machine wrapped in skin." But before she could fire, Tarak's eyes fluttered open, a weak but fierce spark flaring in their emerald depths. A thin blue light burst from her, fragile as a dusk wind, but enough to fling Mara back, her gun spinning away across the sand. Elias didn't hesitate, charging forward, his fist crashed into Mara's jaw, bones snapping with a dry crack as she crumpled, unconscious amid the wreckage. He spun back, kneeling to lift Tarak, hands trembling as they touched her freezing silver skin. "You okay?" he asked, voice low with worry, eyes locked on her sharp features, her black hair matted with sweat and dust. She nodded faintly, slender hands clutching his arm for balance, and a voice echoed in his mind, soft but clear as water over stone. "The truth. I am a weapon. But I choose not to kill." Elias stared, breath catching, feeling an invisible bond tie them, not the chains of war, but trust and sacrifice. "You chose me," he said, voice firm as an oath, hand tightening around hers. "Then we're getting out together." Tarak smiled, a faint but warm curve, like moonlight breaking through a storm, and a tiny ember of hope flickered in his chest. They ran to Mara's ship, a smaller, sleeker transport than their rusted wreck, its silver hull glinting faintly under the moon's glow. Elias climbed into the cockpit, hands flying over the controls with practiced ease, punching in coalition codes etched into his memory. The engine purred awake, a smooth hum unlike the old ship's rasp, and a flicker of relief eased his tension as it powered up. But the radar screamed, red lights pulsing like blood, a fleet loomed on the screen, Scarvin's black warships rising from the dust, and a larger coalition vessel blotting out the stars above. "We're surrounded," he muttered, voice taut, hands gripping the controls. Tarak touched him, cold but steady, sending a vision, a hidden tunnel in a nearby crater, its mouth cloaked in rubble, leading to an abandoned Tychari base with glowing blue stone. "Let's go," he said, resolute, diving the ship into the crater at breakneck speed, dodging a plasma volley from Scarvin's fleet, explosions ringing behind them like a final threat. They landed in a vast cavern, the engine's hum fading into silence. Towering blue stone pillars rose around them, shimmering like jade, mirroring the memory Tarak had shared, a lost world. At the center stood an ancient structure, a lab forgotten by time, its metal walls dust-caked, controls faintly aglow. Tarak stepped forward, legs trembling but resolute, pressing a hand to a dust-shrouded panel. Blue light spread from her touch, like water across a parched desert, and a metallic voice spoke in Tychari tones, lilting and ancient, then translated, cold and clear. "Welcome, Tarak Veyn, Shaper." Elias turned to her, stunned, mouth open but wordless, sharp eyes brimming with questions. "Shaper?" he rasped, hand brushing his knife as if to anchor himself. Tarak faced him, her emerald eyes heavy with sorrow, glistening like an ocean of grief. "I'm not the last warrior," she said in his mind, voice soft but weighted. "I created them, the Tychari warriors, to protect my people. I forged their tech, honed their power, but our enemies stole it, turned it against us. I made myself a weapon to stop them, and failed. My people are gone." Elias took her hand, her cold fingers cradled in his rough palm, her pain bleeding into his own. "You didn't fail," he said, voice low but unwavering, eyes piercing hers. "You're alive, and I'm here. We haven't lost." Tarak smiled, a fragile spark of hope in her gaze, like dawn after an endless night. But then, an explosion shook the cavern. Scarvin and Mara, now allied, had found them. Mercenaries poured in, their heavy steps and Scarvin's growls mingling with the clatter of weapons. A battle erupted amid the blue stone. Elias wielded a scavenged plasma rifle, dropping 2 foes with precise shots, the blasts echoing sharply. He drew his knife, charging into melee, plunging it through a cyborg's chest. Sparks flew as it fell. Tarak, weakened, activated ancient machines along the walls. Hulking metal forms rumbled alive, unleashing blue energy waves that scattered the enemy. But Mara rose from the rubble, eyes locked on Tarak, firing without hesitation. A plasma bolt struck Tarak's chest, the force hurling her back into a stone pillar. Silver blood flowed, glinting in the dim light, and she collapsed, breaths ragged as a dying wind. "No!" Elias roared, voice breaking with anguish, rushing to cradle her, hands shaking as they pressed her wound, silver blood staining his palms. The cavern trembled, enemy fire still ringing out, but for Elias, time stopped. Only he and Tarak remained, teetering between life and death. Tarak lay in Elias's arms, her frail form quaking, silver blood streaming from her chest wound, shimmering like a rivulet under the cavern's faint blue glow. He held her close, hands trembling as they brushed her icy skin, her shallow breaths whispering against his neck, fragile as a desert breeze. "Don't die," he murmured, voice cracking with pain, hot tears streaking his dust-caked face, falling onto her tangled black hair. The cavern shook around them, distant mercenary blasts echoing, but to Elias, the noise faded. Only Tarak mattered, her dimming emerald eyes, and the crushing fear of losing her. Mara advanced from the shadows, boots crunching on white sand, each step a cold countdown. She raised her plasma pistol, its barrel glowing red, aimed at him, her steely gaze unyielding. "Hand it over, Voss," she said, voice cutting through the heavy air. "Or die with it." But before she could fire, Tarak gripped his hand, her silver fingers tightening with her last strength. A warm blue energy surged through him, not to kill, but alive, soothing his shoulder's ache, healing him in an instant, muscles surging with renewed vigor. Elias leapt up, slamming into Mara with superhuman speed, a hammer-like fist cracking her ribs as she collapsed, unconscious amid the debris. He knelt back beside Tarak, lifting her gently, eyes wide with awe and worry. "What did you do?" he rasped, breaths ragged, staring at her sharp features, her silver blood gleaming like rare gems. "Shared life," she answered faintly in his mind, voice soft as wind over stone, resolute despite her weakness. "I can't die if you live." Elias glanced around. Scarvin and his mercenaries had fled, their chaotic retreat fading as the cavern's ancient Tychari machines fully activated. Towering metal forms hummed, a shimmering blue shield enveloping the space, its radiance like a starry night on water, blocking all threats. He carried Tarak deeper into the lab, boots thudding on cold stone, laying her on a glowing control table etched with strange runes. "You need rest," he said, voice low and gentle, brushing her hair, but she shook her head, emerald eyes flashing with resolve. She pointed to a green crystal in the room's center, fist-sized and pulsing like a star's heart. "Heart of Tychari," she said in his mind, voice an ancient song. "It can remake me, and us." Elias retrieved it, its warm power thrumming in his palm, like a living pulse. He placed it in her hands, her trembling silver fingers clutching it tight. A blue light flared, faint at first like a spark in a gale, then swelled, enveloping her in a gentle, fierce wave. Tarak groaned softly, body jerking as the light seeped into her wound, silver blood stilling, pain etching her face. Elias knelt beside her, hands steadying her shoulders, voice low and urgent. "Hold on, I'm here." The light wove through her, sealing the wound from within, her breaths rasping with effort. Slowly, her silver skin gleamed like fresh steel, emerald eyes sparking anew, though she leaned on him, breath steadying. When the light faded, Tarak rose, her cold hand grasping his for balance, a faint but full smile breaking across her lips. "We won," he said, squeezing her hand, feeling her silver warmth seep into his palm. But Tarak gazed beyond the cavern, where the blue shield shone, reflecting off the pillars like a promise. "Not just one," she said in his mind, voice brimming with hope. "We'll rebuild. My people are gone, but with you, I can start anew." Elias nodded, her strength flowing in him, a piece of her now his, and he hers, two halves of a greater whole. He gripped her hand tighter, chest warming at the thought of a future beyond survival, a life truly lived. They left the cavern in Mara's ship, its engine purring smoothly as it pierced the blue shield, soaring into the void. Elias piloted, hands deft on the controls, steering toward a distant system Tarak chose. A pristine green planet on the screen, a jewel amid the dark, its oceans glinting and forests sprawling endlessly. As the ship streaked through space, starlight streaked across the viewport, illuminating Elias and Tarak, no longer fugitives, but pioneers of a new world. He glanced at her, no longer just a warrior or shaper, but his partner, who'd walked through darkness with him to find light. "New digs look decent?" he teased, a rare smile tugging his lips. She laughed, a clear sound like wine through her lost stone pillars. "With you anywhere is home," she said in his mind, voice warm as an eternal vow. The ship accelerated, vanishing among the stars, carrying two bound souls, a human and a Tychari, not just survivors of war and betrayal, but architects of a new dawn. On that green world they'd sow the first seeds of hope, where compassion and strength melded into an undying light, a flame to pierce the universe's endless dark. Elias stole one last look at Tarak, her eyes twinkling like the stars outside, and he knew, wherever they went, with her beside him, he'd found his true home.